XRP ledger private ledgers. Why was this created? Who's using the technology? Where is it today? Is the price going to be the same across the public and private ledgers? Is XRP even used on private ledgers? I want to answer all of this and more in this video. We're also going to go over some myths and rumors. I'm going to tell you what is true and what isn't true. By the time you're done with this video, you will know everything there is to know about XRPL private ledgers. You ready? Let's go. We got to start, of course, with the man, the myth, the legend, Brad Garlinghouse, explaining why private ledgers were created in the first place.
We launched that product. We were partnered with one of the largest banks in the Middle East, and we went to market and we went live. And we had a call from a very upset Middle Eastern banker saying, wait a minute, people can see my transactions. I don't want people to see my transactions. So look, blockchain is powerful and a public ledger can be leveraged to make transactions. But banks, I mean, if every SCB transaction was written to a public ledger, would any be excited about that? The answer is no, I'll tell you very certainly. The nature of how we have evolved our technology, yes, some of it, XRP is a public open ledger. A different part of Ripple's technology that connects banks to the liquidity solutions, these are private, think about it almost as a private temporary blockchain between two banks. It's cryptographically signing the transaction, holding it in escrow, and releasing it at the same time. So you never have a situation where a transaction doesn't complete.
All right, so let's take a look deeper at what this is. XRP private ledgers, the private ledgers are closed blockchain environments built on Ripple's XRP ledger technology designed for central banks, governments, and financial institutions needing privacy, regulatory compliance, and control that the public ledgers cannot provide. These ledgers use permission validators, only trusted nodes, operate in isolated environments, and can settle transactions at scale with minimal costs while maintaining the foundational benefits of the XRP ledger's speed, reliability, and interoperability. How does this all work? Private ledgers work privately. Private transactions and account data are not visible to the public, protecting sensitive financial information. Scalable, can process tens of thousands of transactions per second, far exceeding conventional systems and most public blockchains. Minimal fees, inherent XRPLs, very low transaction cost, enabling microtransactions at higher volume of operations. Custom compliance, built-in integration of KYC and AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and specific regulatory requirements. The interoperable part is can connect with existing legacy financial infrastructure and potentially with public XRPL network for asset transfers and settlement. What are the benefits to banks, central banks, and private institutions that want to use this? Privacy and control. Central banks can issue and manage central bank digital currencies using CBDCs for tokenized financial assets in an environment where transaction data and monetary flows are protected from public view, enhancing security and regulatory compliance. Efficient settlement, near instant settlement, 2 to 4 seconds, eliminates traditional banking delays and banking hours, making transfers and monetary movements vastly more efficient. So instead of the bank closing on a Friday afternoon and everyone going home and saying, good luck with your transaction, this is going to be available 24/7, 365. If anything needs to go anytime, day or night, even on holidays, it will work. Tokenization and asset management. This is another benefit. Institutions can experiment with tokenizing real-world assets. Example is bonds, real estate, commercial paper in a controlled sandbox, improving efficiency and enabling new financial products. And we've had Ripple working with central banks all over the world. Some of them have been using this technology and sandbox testing and hardening it. This is why this is a technology that's trusted globally. Cost savings, of course, we talked about lower fees, energy usage, and create operational cost reductions, especially compared to legacy systems like SWIFT. CBDC readiness, designed to help governments and central banks launch their digital currencies with flexible controls, full auditability, and high security. And then testing and innovation. Private ledgers offer R&D platform for banks to innovate, test cross-border payments, asset tokenization without exposing proprietary data or internal processing to public scrutiny. It talks about benefits to the XRP ledger community, adoption, narrative, and legitimacy. Institutional adoption of Ripple's technology validates the underlying XRP ledger and brings media, regulatory, and investor attention. As more institutions rely on the XRP ledger, confidence in its robustness and security increases, positively impacting public perception of the XRP in general, potential increased utility and demand as central banks and financial institutions develop on the XRP ledger private ledgers. Demand for interoperability and cross-border settlement may eventually spill over to the public ledger, increasing utility and demand for XRP as a bridge asset for liquidity. This institutional infrastructure positions XRP as a foundational token in the future of global financial ecosystem. Talks about trust, security, and market liquidity. I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. Fee burn and effect and scarcity. We researched this the other day on a live stream. We got it with the AI. We asked if the XRP ledger took over every transaction in the world, how much burn would you see each year? And the total, like the max burn was like 35 or 40 million XRP if XRP was used for every transaction. So the burn rate really isn't going to come into play in our lifetimes and probably not for many years to come, but just wanted to clarify and give you that additional information. Does talk about new asset classes and arbitrage opportunities. The ability to move tokenized assets between public and private ledgers can create new trading and arbitrage opportunities. Retail traders may benefit from price discrepancies or emerging institutional grade tokenized assets based on XRP ledger community. I did want to jump into this next part here. Jake Claver breaking it down for us.
There are private permission ledgers that are replicas of the XRPL that Ripple has trialed with institutions that are, potentially side chains or derivatives of the XRPL, but there is no other XRP. There's only one XRP. Now, when those transactions between counterparties that may be trusted start moving over the mainnet and move through XRP as the liquidity tool, or the DEX routes them that way because it's cheaper than, moving them between counterparties in a trusted ecosystem, or the other counterparties no longer trust each other and they don't want to hold each other's stable coins, then yeah, that liquidity would then move into XRP, and so would that volume to be able to move the price substantially higher. There are quote unquote private ledgers that Ripple has trialed with these banks, which they have. We've talked to them about it. There will be some type of merge. We asked Ripple this. I've been to Swell. We've talked to them about it. I've asked David Schwartz this specifically. There are not two ledgers for XRP. There is the mainnet. The only asset on the mainnet is XRP. Ripple has created privatized versions of the XRPL that they have trialed with institutions. Okay. Just like they did with Bank of America. They have with the Bank of England. They have with other large institutions.
All right. And here's some myths. Myth busted by David Schwartz. Ripple does not control the XRP ledger. XRP has a fixed supply of 100 billion. No new tokens can be minted. No mining or validator rewards. XRP predates Ripple. XRP ledger is a public blockchain, not private. XRP ledger is fully decentralized. And here are some of the myths that Brad Garlinghouse is the CEO of Ripple. Yada yada yada. And then also Ripple City did post this. Ripple's public versus private chains. What you need to know. I just wanted to break down some of this really quickly. What is the public ledger? The XRP ledger, the Ripple's decentralized public blockchain, open source, anyone can use it. Native asset XRP, used for fast, low cost, borderless payments. What is Ripple's private ledger? In 2022, Ripple confirmed a private version of the XRP ledger to support central bank digital currencies. This is a private ledger permissioned, built for central banks, optimized for privacy, scalability, and compliance. Why a private ledger? Public blockchains aren't ideal for central banks because the lack of privacy can handle sovereign level throughput and are often for confidential monetary policy. Ripple's private ledger solves this by offering custom validator sets. It also talks about controlled access and confidential transactions. It does get into, are the ledgers connected? Yes, technically Ripple has indicated that the private ledgers is built using the same core technologies at the public XRP ledger. This means interoperability is possible, especially if CBDCs need to move across the public rails like XRP for liquidity. Will there ever become one? Check this out.
But the question is, will the value of XRP be the same in the private ledgers as it is on the public?
Yes. The value proposition of XRP is that it has these liquidity pools. If it doesn't make sense to isolate something, like there's no place where gold is worth twice as much as it is now, because if there was, people would just bring gold there and they would buy gold somewhere else and they would sell it there. Unless the only way that you can have the value be very different in two places is if there's a lot of friction. And if there's friction, someone will make a business of removing that friction. So I don't see any realistic scenario where XRP has significantly different value unless something's wrong. Like a good example of a case, there was a time where the value of XRP, they called it the kimchi premium, right? Where the value of XRP in some Asian countries was very high, but that was because there were capital controls, right? That was because things were bad. I think that's a sign that something is not going well. The value proposition of XRP is that you can take it to all of the places, right? If I sell you some gold and you say, hey, this gold can only be used in jewelry, you're like, well, that kind of sucks. I don't want that gold, right? The value proposition of gold is that you have access to the entire value proposition of gold. And so I don't see any scenario in which where it makes sense to snip pieces off, again, unless something is wrong.
All right. And then also too, just to show you this, right? David Schwartz did tweet out, some people believe that the private ledger has $1,000 XRP prices. This belief stems from the assumption that banks or governments using XRP for massive settlements would need fewer tokens with higher value, a stable fixed supply for internal liquidity, NDA-bound speculation, the idea that institutional liquidity requires higher value per XRP, and David Schwartz tweeted this out in 2017. It can't be dirt cheap. That doesn't make any sense. If XRP costs $1, you would need a million XRP to send $1 million. If XRP cost $1 million, then you would only need one XRP to do that. And it says, except that higher prices make payments cheaper. Right now, you can buy $1 million house with Bitcoins when Bitcoins were $300. You would need to move the market too much. It was too expensive to be practical. So higher prices make payments cheaper. Sales of XRP to institutions off market are handled on a use case by case basis and typically come with lockups. They don't influence the XRP's public trade market directly. And then the person did have some final thoughts here. Public XRPL equals open, fast, decentralized payment. Private XRPL means confidential CBDC testing platform. I did want to show you some additional information here though too. This is what I want to show you. Okay, so here are the examples of it being used. Royal Monetary Authority of Bhutan, pilot. Bhutan Central Bank partnered with Ripple in 2021 to pilot a CBDC, the digital you're going to have to help me with that word. Using Ripple's CBDC private ledger. Purpose, enhance financial inclusion, digital payments, and experiment with retail, wholesale, and cross-border use cases for CBDCs. Details designed to leverage Ripple's scalable and cost-effective blockchain infrastructure, focused on reaching 85% of financial inclusion by 2023. Another big proponent, right? Another big fan of the XRP ledger is, of course, the Bank of France. Pilot test, Bank of France tested Ripple's private ledger as a platform for Euro-based CBDC. This was publicly reported in 2025. The goal was to assess Ripple's technology for sovereign digital currency issuance, privacy, scalability, and interoperability with legacy infrastructure. Of course, you know about the Republic of Palau. Ripple has conducted CBDC pilot projects with Palau, as confirmed by the company's statements and third-party coverage in 2025, aim at improving cross-border payment infrastructure and financial inclusion via National Stablecoin Initiative on Ripple's private ledger. Now, they did this. This is dollar-based, right? So I believe this was a testing CBDC, dollar-backed CBDC in a smaller market to see if maybe the US wanted to see what this was going to do. 5 central bank CBDC pilots in 2025. In June 2025, Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse revealed 5 new central bank partnerships for issuing or piloting digital currencies with Ripple's private ledger platform. You got Bhutan, Colombia, Japan, and unnamed Southeast Asian government were referenced by industry insiders. Through many banks prefer non-disclosures due to regulatory and privacy reasons. Interesting here to see Japan. Japan is pushing forward with a digital yen. And you start to wonder, is that going to be built on the XRP ledger, or is there a version of that going to be on the XRP ledger? It also says banks using Ripple's technology for private or pilot ledgers. Evidence, major institutions, Citi, BNP Paribas, Standard Chartered, Societe Generale, BBVA Switzerland have relied on Ripple's technology for asset custody and pilot environments according to infrastructure partner Medico. These banks use private or pilot environments. Private or pilot is so, I have not seen that. And so my brain is not okay. Environments for regulatory safety and operational privacy, not on the XRP ledger. There are no verified public wallet addresses for banks. Also too, there was some weird information that Perplexity pulled up. On Ripple's public ledger, XRP ledger, the gas token is always XRP itself. Every transaction burns a small piece of XRP as a fee to prevent spam to ensure network health. For example, recent updates, the minimum fee was 0.00002 per transaction. For private XRP deployments, the situation is more nuanced. Most private ledgers, such as the setup for central banks or institutions, use XRP as the gas token for internal transactions by default. Because the underlying XRP or software treats XRP as the native token for all ledger ops, its specifically customized environments, Ripple CBDC solutions, the private ledger can be configured to use pegged, synthetic, or different digital assets as its native token. So it can't be set up to use a US dollar or something maybe gold backed, some type of different synthetic token to use as the native token on that private ledger. Very interesting, right? Instead of XRP, for instance, a digital euro CBDC test would use a digital euro token minted for that environment rather than XRP, but it still enforces transaction fees and quotas to prevent spam to ensure performance in keeping the XRPL's architecture. Generally, the strong majority of XRP-based private ledgers use XRP as the gas token by default, unless explicitly designed to use another asset for compliance, regulatory, or testing reasons. The fee burning mechanism can operate with any native asset chosen by institution or central banks. That was something that I found really interesting, that you can use something different. And then also, people may not understand, but there are other ecosystems, other blockchains that do have private ledgers, and those would include XDC, XLM, HBAR, Quorum, and Hyperledger also operate private ledgers. So if you're interested in more of that information, we could talk about that at a later date, but I hope you like this deep dive into private ledgers. I hope you learned something. If you got any value, guys, you can hit like or you can share it with somebody. Other than that, have a fantastic week ahead. Pleasure to be on this journey with you. Aloha. Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Please seek financial advice if you need it. Let's get back to the video.